Today, I don't have a guest for you, but I have an interesting program. I'm going to talk about some of my very interesting transdimensional adventures. And the next adventure is a day that I spent with some intergalactic children and their community on a different world, a different planet. Now, before I start, I guess I should clarify that I was not under the influence of any kind of psychedelics while I had this experience. All of my experiences, or most of my experiences, happen while I'm asleep. And I have different kind of dream states that facilitate this. Occasionally, I will remember a dream and it will be fairly detailed, but nothing like my transdimensional travels. And it took me quite a long time to realize that my transdimensional experiences are real, very real. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a panel and invite some guests on who also share some of these very real, amazing experiences. Oh, I forgot to mention, happy autumn. I guess we're into that time of year. I hope you're all enjoying the crisp weather or rain, depending on how it manifests for you, and the beautiful autumn leaves if you're lucky enough to experience the 4 seasons. Anyway, I guess I should just get on with it. The second experience I had while I was doing the away work on the big ship. And you can learn more about that by watching my other podcast called Aliens and Angels. But also, I'm thrilled to tell you that I'm making really good progress on my manuscript, and I hope to publish this year sometime my book all about these experiences. So for those of you who aren't familiar, I basically went to the big ship, what I call the big ship, which rests in kind of an envelope between different dimensional realities, and sort of an envelope of space, as I perceived it. And when I went there while I was sleeping every single night for 3 months, Earth time, our time, every single night. And then it stopped. And while I was away, there was a time dilation. So it was very much like 3.5 years worth of experiences. And so when my book comes out, you're going to want to read it, because it's very, very interesting how I discovered myself there, how I went through the orientation. At first I was really concerned because I had a cat at the time, and I didn't want to be away. Nobody would know where I was. And I was told that even though I was there for perhaps a week, 2 weeks, or even a month, that I would return, wake up in the morning and find myself back at home. That's the way interdimensional, transdimensional travel works. So while I was on the big ship, I had a number of different kinds of experiences. One was what I call exopolitical ambassadorship, where I would meet with other beings, and I would download my perceptions of being a person on Earth in this time and this era, and how I perceive things that were going on Earth into their sort of data bank or recording system. And then I also participated in what I call the pre-settlement program, which is a program where we would go on expeditions and we would scout out different planets and do assessments and scientific work to prepare for the eventual settlement of humanoids. So these planets had everything you could even or ever imagine, except no humanoids. And we would do the work of gathering data so that we would, or someone could figure out the best way to emigrate humanoids without disrupting the natural systems in the biosphere. So anyway, and then the third program that I participated in was actually resettling beings on these planets. And it's way too much information to really get into while I'm here, but I do want to tell you a little bit about about my second experience that I want to tell you about today. And so after doing some of the pre-settlement work, I actually got to go to a couple of different worlds and see what resettlement looked like from a low technology perspective, and other worlds where I got to see it from a higher technology perspective. Because you can, when you emigrate to a new world, you actually have your choice as to the level of technology that you want to use to basically rebuild or build civilization and populate that world. And so there's quite a lot of free will and free choice for sure in that. Although everybody who resettles to a specific world, they all take the same level of technology. There isn't different levels of technology on a single planet. So I'm just looking at my recording button here. It's flickering, so I'm hoping that it's recording properly, because I'd hate to have to repeat all this. But anyway, so if you wonder why I'm glancing over, that would be why. So anyway, so I want to tell you about one visit to a very low-tech settlement, and I enjoyed it so much. It was such a fabulous experience. Now, I was there for about a week, but I want to talk about what happened one day in particular to give you a bit of an overview of what one of these settlements might look like. Of course, they're all different, but this is the one that I remember very, very clearly. So in this particular settlement and on this particular world, the climate is very mild. And this was a settlement that was near the ocean. And on this particular planet, there's a lot of vegetation and copious amounts of dew. So I didn't notice a fresh water source, but I did find out that they use the dew. They collect the morning dew. There's so much of it that they collect it and they use that for their fresh water source. And because of the amount of dew, all of their homes are built high up in the trees. And they're not at all rough or primitive. They're very elaborate, beautiful homes that are built all out of natural byproducts of the vegetation below. And they're just these beautiful tree homes. And you get into really good shape climbing up and down the ladders. They do have some lift systems, you know, for bringing things up and down, but basically we didn't use them for getting up there or for getting back down to the ground. We just climbed down these ladders or climbed up these ladders. So anyway, I was basically asleep, and I woke up in the morning and I heard children laughing. And so as I come out of my sleep state, I noticed there was like 3 or 4 of them gathered, and they were looking at me and they were laughing. Now, they weren't laughing at me, but they were giggling because they were really surprised at what I looked like. I looked so different from them. They had dark toned skin and long, kinky, more kinky than my hair today, black hair. And they had large, beautiful, dark eyes, and they were ever so healthy looking. And they'd never seen anybody like me with long white hair. And my eyes, compared to theirs, looked very small, and they were blue. And, you know, I've got freckles and I have very pale skin. And they were just really just kind of inquisitive and curious and giggling at the way I looked. So I woke up. And as soon as I was awake, they came and they'd grab one arm, one grabbed the other arm, and they pulled me towards the ladder to start the day because they wanted to spend the day with me. And I was okay with it. So we climbed down the ladder and we all ran. I ran in the same direction as them, and we ran to the ocean. And the sand, oh my God, the sand was black and sparkly. It was so beautiful. And the water was kind of a pale, kind of a green color. And the kids just pulled me and tugged at me, and we just ran into the water, and it just was so beautiful. It wasn't cold at all. It wasn't extremely warm either, but it was pleasant. It was just really pleasant. We swam around and we splashed each other. And this is what these beings do. Basically, instead of having a bath, they start their day with a swim and a bit of a wash. And then after we were done playing in the water for a while, the kids motioned for me to follow. Oh, by the way, in these resettled worlds on the big ship, nobody speaks English, nobody speaks a language. It's all telepathy. Telepathy is the universal language amongst all the different beings from different worlds and even different dimensions. Words are so incredibly limiting once you experience telepathy, and it's such a fabulous communication skill. And I recommend everybody get used to it because and start practicing, because you're going to need it with the changes that are coming in the future. So anyway, they motioned for me to follow them, and I followed them, and we went back into a grassy area, and everybody rolled on the grass. Now there's so much dew. It's like having another bath, and it washed off all the salt. And when we were done doing that, we went back to the settlement. But on the way, we stopped and they showed me several different trees and bushes, which some of them I had already become familiar with in the previous days. And we just ate fruit and berries, and it was just sweet and delicious and very, very satisfying. And that's basically what they do. They do have one meal a day. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And in this one meal a day, that's an actual cooked sit-down meal, but the rest is just pluck stuff from trees and bushes and eat. It's everywhere and in abundance and very, very delicious. So when we got back to the settlement, there was basically the whole settlement. Everybody was awake and getting ready to start their day, and everybody was very busy. And there was a number of different sort of projects going on. There were people that were laying down these large grass mats to sit on, and in sort of cleared areas, and they had piles and piles of these huge dried leaves, and some of them were pulling the fibers from the leaves, and other people were basically going over plans for building new structures, possibly new homes, I'm not sure, and deciding who was going to do what. I did notice that there was no sexual division of labor, which means that there was no, like, it wasn't women doing all this kind of work and men all doing that kind of work. People who, I call them people because to me they are people or beings, whatever you're most comfortable with. You know, they just kind of decided on what they like to do, where their skill set was, their talent, and they would just help out. But everybody had something to do. So a woman that I call Mother Soft Eyes, and again, they don't have names. They have kind of identifiers are a bit of composites from the way they look or a mannerism they have, or you know, if they're known for their gentleness or their strength, that's kind of all incorporated in a sort of a concept, and that's how we identify each other. I call her Mother Soft Eyes because she had very beautiful, soft, loving eyes, and she was the mother of quite a few children, and I just called her Mother Soft Eyes. So anyway, she motioned for me to come over and sit down on one of these mats. And then she put a smaller mat on my lap, and she put one on her lap. And then she showed me how to pull these fibers from these big giant leaves. And once we'd gathered a pile of the fibers, she was showing me how to roll them on my lap on the mat to form twine. They use twine a lot for lashing together, you know, poles before they add walls. And I mean, yes, the supplies that they use for their building are what we might consider primitive, but at the same time, there's nothing primitive about the homes and the functionality of them. So maybe the twine was used for, you know, lashing small wooden logs to make the ladders that go up to the different units, or whatever. The basic structure of the walls, you know, are basically poles that are lashed together with this twine. They make this very, very strong twine by rolling the fibers on their lap, and then they would just keep adding them, and the twine would get longer and longer. Some people were also removing fibers from different plants that were much finer, and they were sort of rolling it and twisting it into thread that was going to be used for making garments and carry bags and sacks and things like that. But I was basically just working on making the twine. And I didn't do a very good job, but Mother's Soft Eyes was very kind and she seemed to appreciate my efforts. And so I did that for a while. And then the kids came and got me and were pulling at me and just so eager to take me on the beetle hunt. So these beings are omnivores. They eat fruits and basically even some vegetable-like fruits, but primarily, I guess you would class them as fruits. And they also eat flower petals, all kinds of different flowers in all kinds of colors. They also eat for nourishment, but they also eat, of course, they eat some seafood and some fish. And small flightless birds that they catch. But their favorite meal, and the one they were preparing for this big feast we were going to have, was the beetles. Now the beetles are dome shaped. They're in a shell, and the shell is very dome shaped, and they've got skinny little bony legs, small heads, and they're just in abundance. So the kids, it's their job to hunt the beetles. So it was like a big honor that I got to go with them. And so we had like a little troop of kids and me, and we all went off down the trails to hunt for the beetles. Now on the way there, the kids showed me which plants are good to feed from and which plants I should stay away from. And one of the plants that I should stay away from is actually carnivorous. They're carnivorous plants. And they also eat the beetles. So these beetles are in such abundance that carnivorous plants eat them, other animals eat them, birds of prey eat them, and there's still tons and tons of these beetles. They're just super prolific. And the older a beetle gets, the larger its shell is. So anyway, we walked all through, and there's flowers everywhere, and it's just beautiful. And the smells were so beautiful from the flowers and the plants. And it was just, I just love the environment. So anyway, marching along with these kids, and eventually we come to this clearing. And a couple of the kids had helped carry this big net. And they spread the net out on the ground. And then we took our places on the outside of the net, and we're all squatted down and holding a piece of the net at the edge. And we were very, very quiet. And soon out from all over, just everywhere, came these beetles. Now, some of them were only like a couple, maybe 2-3 inches in diameter, but some of them were quite a bit longer, like a foot or a foot and a half in diameter. And the odd one was even bigger than that. But when enough of them had walked into the net, we just pulled up our edges and put them together. And here was this giant net full of these beetles. Oh, I forgot one thing. Okay, so this is really cool. So, these are very loving, kind people. And they needed to kill the beetles, but they did it in the most amazing way. So before we gathered up our net, the children all emitted a telepathic frequency. Now, I couldn't detect it. I think you had to be around them long enough to learn how to perceive the frequency or how to make it, or maybe it was a talent that they just had within their, genetic makeup. I don't know. But the kids would emit a tone, and all of the beetles went into a sleep state. And at that point, some of the older children, they had not knives, but they had like rocks that had very sharp edges. And they jumped up and they lopped off the heads of all these beetles. And they just tossed the heads, here and there back into the wooded and, areas full of plants, I guess, for scavengers to eat or whatever. And then we gathered up the edges, and the older kids were so proud, hauling this big haul of a net full of these beetles back to the camp. So as we marched into the camp, and I thought this was really interesting because although there's no speech language, these beings are able to make sounds. They are able to make vocalizations. So as we came back into the camp, all the parents cheered as though we were heroes because we had gotten the haul of food for the evening meal, and it was like we had done some great thing. It really wasn't that great. It was just a really interesting process, but all the parents were so proud, and the kids were so proud, carrying the beetles. So they spread out the net. And then all the kids got together and they removed the organ sacs from the beetles, put them in a pile, and they pulled off all the bony legs, and they just prepared them so that they could set them aside for later for the evening meal. And then a couple of the kids gathered up all of the organ sacs and basically left. I didn't know where they went. Mother Soft Eyes informed me that they put them out at the edge of the settlement for different kinds of, different kinds of like birds of prey and other animals and bugs and whatever to basically scavenge the remains, and that way everything is recycled. So that was the beetle hunt. That was really fun. So by now it was early afternoon, and some of the kids were getting sleepy, and some of the old people were getting kind of tired, and enough of the dew had evaporated that I noticed that the older people were laying out these large sort of woven mats made out of some kind of grasses, and the kids and the old people all laid down and had a nap. And of course, I went and laid down and had a nap too. And we slept for, I'm guessing, about an hour or so. And then we woke up and everybody sprang back into action. Now, the older juveniles, the adults, they didn't seem to need the nap, but the old people and the kids, it was kind of sweet, having this nap together on these grass mats. So after that, the kids motioned, come on, we got things to do. They didn't say it, but they, motioned it. And so I went with them again. I just love being around the kids. And we went off. And this time, everybody had these woven sacks, and we were collecting beetle shells. So beetle shells are used for all kinds of things. They're very iridescent, very highly reflective. And the shells that were intact were used for things like cups and bowls, and the larger shells, when we were able to find them, were very highly prized. They were used as storage containers. They were used for, larger containers for foods and fruits and different things like that. But a lot of the shells were broken, especially when we came near the carnivorous plants. So the kids and we just gathered up everything, broken shells, intact shells, everything. And we just gathered all that we could carry, and we hauled them back to camp. And what's interesting is the broken shells are used for lots of things. Like, for instance, they line either side of the different pathways with them because they're highly reflective. And I don't know, I didn't see anybody really going out at night, but I'm assuming that they also reflected like the moonlight, and it sort of made the paths very, very visible. They also as I mentioned, use them for utilitarian things like as bowls and drinking vessels and, storage containers and stuff, the intact ones. But some of the broken shells were also used to make very beautiful, ornate jewelry. And some of them that were, the smaller pieces were actually sort of ground into a powder, and they were mixed with the beetle grease, which I'll get into a little bit later, and used as a cosmetic. So I thought that was super interesting too. So anyway, by the time we got back from that, it was time to start preparing for this big sit-down evening meal. And oops, I'm running out of time. I better hurry up. So they have these big fire pits that are laid with these huge flat stones, and the stones are just there all the time. But then they burn all kinds of things to produce the coals and the heat to warm up these big flat stones that become sort of the cooking surface. So the beetles are laid out. The adults do this, not the kids, because, those stones are pretty hot. It's full of coals and stuff. But the beetles are laid out in their shells all over these big, large stones. And then they cover the beetles up with these other large leaves, but these ones were green and more fresh than the ones we use for fibers. And they just cover it all up, and then the meat cooks. Now, the meat from these beetles has a very high fat content. It's quite greasy by our standards, but very delicious. But the beetles, before they're cooked, they kind of stink. They've got a real musky, kind of a stinky odor to them, where you would never expect them to be pleasant to eat. But while they cooked, I guess there's some kind of a change in the meat, and the smell was fantastic. I just thinking about it makes my mouth water. It was absolutely delicious. And while the meat was cooking, children and people of all ages would get together, and some had gathered fruits, and they sort of used the less sweet fruits for supper, and a lot of flower petals. So everybody was like kids were pulling the petals off the flowers, filling these beetle bowls, and other people were, slicing up the different less sweet fruits and getting them ready in bowls and things, and getting the dishes, everything ready. We didn't use any utensils. When the meat is cooked, it's very tender, and people just grab a shell and reach in and grab sort of mouth-sized handfuls of this greasy meat and just stuff it in your mouth and eat it, and grab some other edibles, the vegetables, all fruits, whatever. I mean, they kind of all grow on trees and vines and stuff, so I'm thinking they're probably all technically fruits. And then, of course, flower petals. And the different flower petals, the different colored petals, have different flavors. And so that was kind of like served as like the spice that would go along with the foods. So anyway, so we all ate until we were totally full. And then there's quite a bit of scraps left over, and a lot of these beetle bowls were not empty, they had scraps in them and stuff. And then what some of the beings did is gathered all those bowls up. And then Mother Soft Eyes told me that, didn't tell me in words, but telepathically told me that they render the leftover greasy meat for the fat. And then the fats are used as like skincare products, lubricants, to rainproof things, all kinds of different things. Nothing is wasted there. And the legs, the bony legs that were pulled off from the beetles, they were all different sizes. And they were used for all kinds of things too. Everything from toothpicks to things for fixing your hair, to nails, what we would consider nails for the building projects, just all kinds of things. And so then after we had the evening meal and we cleaned everything up, then there was a huge bonfire that was built in this big fire pit, and everybody sat around the fire, and they did a method of storytelling that I thought was really cool. So one being or person started off the story with providing, and this is all done telepathically, but providing a very vivid image of something. So this particular evening, he started off with this sort of mountain that was in the center of this island. And so we all sort of saw it in our mind's eye. It was very clear. And then the next person would add to the story. And this went on, and everybody had a chance to add to the story. And I thought, wow, what an amazing community building experience as we went around the circle. And when it came to me, I was quite proud of myself, because I projected the image of a cave on the side of the mountain, and just popped out this big snarling grizzly bear with its claws out, right? And I guess I did it quite well, because the children all screamed. They were startled. They all screamed when they saw this big bear, and the adults just laughed and out loud. And I was really proud of myself, because I had created this image convincingly to scare the children and amuse the grown-ups. I mean, I wasn't trying to scare the children. It was just kind of like, I thought it needed a little bit of a boogeyman in the story, right? So that's why I did that. So anyway, not long after that, we're just sitting around and enjoying life. And the children start yawning, and that's when we would break formation, and the children would get carried or kind of slowly climb up the ladders because it was bedtime. And I climbed up one and went back to the quarters where I was sleeping and went to sleep. And the next day, actually, I needed to go home, and I was so sorry to leave them. And they were just such lovely, lovely beings. And there's more to the story, but I'll let you wait and read about that in my book. But that was an amazing, amazing experience, and I enjoyed it so much. There was much hugging and tears when I left. I really, really miss those beings. It was an amazing, amazing experience. So I thought I would share that one with you. Hi guys, break time for a short message. YouTube will not monetize me, so if you enjoy my content and want to support my efforts, help me to cover my expenses by visiting my shop to buy yourself a beautiful orgone generator. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand, and they are ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. They are only available through my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. Many people are finding comfort with Zendome's orgone generators, commonly called orgonite. They are a simple compound which balance ambient energy by converting negative energy and EMF into positive healing energy with many easily confirmed health benefits. They are a simple compound with alchemic and energetic properties. These devices function as self-driven, continuously operating, highly efficient, negative to positive energy transmutation factories. They help diminish the harmful effects of electromagnetic frequency radiation by attracting and converting negative energies, retuning them into new and more healthful sound and light wave patterns. And they help to purify the atmosphere and accelerate plant growth. They also help stimulate positive mood and are a natural remedy for poor sleep patterns. When orgonite is within range of any corded or wireless electronic device, it will efficiently and continuously transform that energy into orgone as it is being transmitted. This essentially creates orgone energy transmitters out of any and all emitters of harmful negative energy. You can use these devices for focusing the mind, healing, meditation, and for spiritual growth. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are only available through my website. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out my website to see my latest selection at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. Check them out today. Now, let's get back to the show. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. A very special thank you to Andy Gambino and Anthony Exemplar from the Unidentified S4 channel for creating the beautiful introduction for this podcast. Until next time, keep up the good work.